I can talk to you. But I know you. I know.
Lord, you very good speaker.
No.
You have more drugs where you keep it. Yeah, you have more.
More. This is the standard package you always have.
Yeah.
That is the national police boss of Thailand's drug enforcers questioning a Chinese merchant named Lo Fan.
Smoke is 350 grams.
350
grams.
and 50 grams แล้วก็999ได้กี่ก้อน
999นี่ก็ก้อนหนึ่งทั้งหมด10
kilos, 1.8 kilos,
So
10
this-
packets.
Yes.
So you're sitting
So now this-
with another 40 pounds or so.
So the mixture you have here could be used, this was destined for that part of the
Well,
world.
this could have ended up on the streets of New York or
Not
Chicago.
right on the streets of New York, right in Harlem. And that's what they're shooting.
นี่ชื่ออะไรคนไทยป่ะ
You born in China? You were born in China?
Where are you born
Where are you born?
What's your nationality
บอกเสียงดังเปิดนี่เปิดระวัง
那个澎湖刚刚有在上海有去，
อันนี้ทำที่ไหนรู้ไหมเนี่ย
อันนี้มาของที่เขาเอามาจาก
200,000
สองหมื่นเก้า
แล้วน้ำหนักเท่าไหร่
29,000 ใช่ไหม
In other words, the step before that is this. This is the equivalent of making one seizure.
That is, that's a great seizure.
destination USA maybe
This,
As it turns out, Lo Fan does have more. In a search of one of his houses, police found the third largest cache of drugs ever seized anywhere. 150 kilograms of opium, morphine, and heroin. Value? Well, in final sales in places like New York, maybe $75 million. Where's it going?
basically, the usage of number 4 heroin is in the United States. The market is there. That's where you would say this was destined for that part of the
So
world.
this could have ended up on the streets of New York or
Not
Chicago.
right on the streets of New York, right in Harlem.
Lo Fan, the enterprising merchant, is in trouble. Quite likely fatal trouble. Under Article 21 of Thailand's constitution, he could be machine gunned the morning after Prime Minister Thanin signs the order. U.S. agents say you've got to get it in Bangkok. Once it gets into the sophisticated distribution system abroad, it's almost impossible to stop. Bangkok's Don Muang Airport has the toughest customs inspection in the world. A sophisticated electronic scanning system, sniffer dogs, and police, all trying to stop the drugs before they leave.
world's illegal opiates, which are grown in the Golden Triangle region of Southeast Asia. 2 years ago, the International Relations Subcommittee on Future Foreign Policy held 2 days of hearings on the so-called Sean proposal, a plan which was delivered to me that offered to the United States or to any international agency approximately 400 tons of opium from a consortium of opium traffickers, those who control the armed mule caravans which bring opium and morphine base from the farmer's field to the Thai-Burma border where the opiates are refined. That proposal at that time was rejected by the State Department. In April, the Select Committee discussed a new proposal with a group of insurgents who represent the various groups out in the area. These are minority groups that are also engaged in the business of narcotics trafficking. The traffickers want to leave open, as you will see from a film that we're going to show, they want to leave open all aspects of the proposal and subject it to further discussion. Today's hearings will focus on this proposal along with whatever other policy proposals and alternatives that both the state and the Office of Drug Abuse and Prevention can offer to us. The interest of our select committee is the reduction of heroin on the street and brought to central locations for transporting to the refineries. It's the only point where it is in place. The least vulnerable link in the supply chain in terms of making a serious impact on the traffic is the movement of refined opiates, and yet this is where the United States seems to be focusing most of its effort. And that's why I was interested in meeting with these traffickers who are insurgents, we must admit. Pipeline. It's also the reason why the provision of fixed-wing aircraft, which has been requested by our government to add to the supply of the helicopters we already have provided, will, to my mind, have questionable impact. To this date, the 18 helicopters have had really no noticeable impact on the amount of opium flowing from the poppy fields of Asia to the streets of Europe or the United States. These 18 helicopters that have been provided to the Burmese have been unable to reduce the flow of heroin. About 700 high-powered rifles that are there, the sophisticated communications equipment. And I am going to pass these pictures among the committee, and they will be available for the administration sources. I also might make note of the fact that they have recoilless rifles. Now, one point that has been made to me over the years has been, if you buy the opium from these insurgents, what you're going to do is provide them for the money to get the weapons. Well, I ask the committee, where are they getting the money from the weapons today? Not from the United States government, but from the kids of the United States who are providing the funds through the idea of the purchase of the narcotics that are made on an illicit basis. It's quite obvious that they're able to get these weapons today, and if they are, that should remove one of the objections that we hear, that this will provide the funds for the purchase of weapons. Now, in this film, you will note as well that some new solutions were offered. I think that it is time for us to look at this again. I hold no brief for this idea, but at least we should explore these things with a little bit more interest than we have in the past. And I might say that in closing my part of the statement, and I've taken much too long, but this is a job that requires a very, very thorough and intensive effort upon our people. There are estimates that from 10 to $27 billion are involved in the drug trade in the United States. New estimates indicate that up to 25% of the drugs coming into the United States come in from this Golden Triangle area. And I might conclude by a secret report that was issued some time ago that has never surfaced. It was a report of the Murphy Commission made by Mr. Thomas J. Peters and was deep-sixed along with some other things that were deep-sixed during that period. March 25, 1975. Most issues confronting U.S. foreign policy machinery in the 1970s and 78 and 80s will be like drugs in that they will deal with issues related to domestic problems. Implementation of U.S. foreign policy will increasingly require an understanding of the levers necessary to predict and potentially influence internal economic and social behavior of important allies and adversaries. Socio-economic interdependence will continue to increase rapidly. The State Department should take the lead in suggesting creative answers to issues in areas which have traditionally been peripheral to national security analysis. Response at that time to the drug case gives us no reason to view the future with optimism. I view the future with optimism, with, I hope, a new view by the State Department. And I hope that they will view these films in the same fashion that we do, as one.
Happy to meet you.
This is Kunsa, the rebel leader out there.
How are you? Well, that was a nice walk. Yeah. What are those in your
that which they cannot control themselves, they said that they would, in working with the various other groups, and by the way, there are about 7 or 8 different groups there that have formed a consortium for this purpose. The other groups met with the committee and confirmed the statements that were made by this man Kunsa. Now, again, we are dealing with a very difficult situation, one that requires very sensitive handling. I do not believe that our government can take a role in the political situation that exists there. But let me say that to now go to the various, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you very much. Dr. Bourne, it's very good of you to come here. I know that you were with us on the trip that we took to Southeast Asia.
Perhaps at this point I should place the Golden Triangle production in perspective. Our current estimate of worldwide illicit opium ranges between 900 and 1,000 tons. Included in this estimate is 100 tons in Mexico, 400 tons in South Asia, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, up to 100 tons in smaller producing areas, and 400 tons, or 40% of the total, in Southeast Asia, Burma, Thailand, and Laos, of illicit opiates moving from Burma into the international market. This equipment has provided the Burmese with an essential ability to constantly harass opium convoys, destroy refineries, and to eradicate poppies in the fields. The success of this Burmese effort is indicated by the fact that only one major caravan has been dispatched south to the border so far this year, and this SUA caravan was interrupted, at least temporarily, by Burmese forces. 3 major constraints inhibit progress towards the ultimate goal of eliminating and cooperate with in dealing with the narcotics problem. By a ruthless band of ethnic Chinese opium warlords who force their will on Shan peasants with brutality and intimidation. Their motivation is profit derived from opium, which they then use to purchase more sophisticated arms and ammunition for use in protecting their opium operation and against the government of Burma. A compelling argument against this approach is to be found those who are involved in the law enforcement aspects of the narcotic trade in Thailand. It's a reward system aimed at creating greater motivation in the seizure of drugs, but those are drugs that are seized directly in the course of their duty as narcotic enforcement officers, and does not involve in any way directly a negotiated agreement with the traffickers.
You are not paying the narcotics officers, you're paying the informers, are you not?
Well, the money is actually being, I understand, used by the Thai narcotic enforcement officers
to pay the informers.
We are not paying anybody directly.
To pay the informers. In other words, we don't pay the Thai narcotics people to capture the opium. What we are doing is paying for the information and paying for a reward for that which is interdicted to those people who have given the information.
Well, this is customary practice both in this country and elsewhere as part of law enforcement.
It may be customary practice, but that is one of the areas where I find a dichotomy existing. When we talk about the idea of purchasing a large quantity, we're willing to do it, be a little bit pregnant, and purchase small quantities, but we're not interested in purchasing large quantities because we have to deal perhaps with the same people. Now, I want you to know that one aspect of this, and it's certainly not your doing because it occurred long before you came here into this variety of Asian heroin coming into this country than has ever come in before and into Europe. I recall being visited by the Drug Enforcement Administration and told that about 1% to 5% of the consumption in the United States was Asian heroin. Now it's 20%. Now there may be a reduced supply. Your figures is 20%. Some other people have quoted 25%.
Well, I think the official DEA figures are 12%. Those are the most recent figures that they have provided.
This is another difficulty that we in the committee face. Our information is based upon interdictions, and I don't think there's anybody here, regardless of whether they're from the Drug Enforcement Administration, whether they're from ODAP or from the Congress, that can tell how much stuff is coming into this country, what the percentage is, or anything else. The figures are all phony figures, all of the figures. And that's one of the problems I find. And this is not directed at you, but the fact is that we are not getting the right story, and the American people are not getting the information that they are required. With all of the money that we're spending, we certainly should at least know what the problem is. I would ask that we...
But we're also involved in the international black market trade. At the Narmon camp, various equipment used in processing heroin, lab apparatus, number 999 branding blocks, weights and measures for weighing opium, chemical balances, batteries, and wireless.
The effort that was shown here, Dr. Bourne, indicated the 2 points that were made. One was the fact that they were beating the poppies over the heads with sticks, and the other was the fact that they were coming in with aircraft and bombing the area. I mean, there's one point there where you hear the bombs drop and what have you. Now, it may be unfair, but I might say to you that I do not feel that this really, I think this is a propaganda film. And I'm sorry to say that. I'll let my other colleagues comment on it, but I just will bring one other factor to your attention. The latest operation that they had, that the Burmese had, was at Mae Hong Son. And they captured 30 Thais who they thought were SUA, and almost precipitated a war between the Thais and the Burmese. I just wonder whether, I know you for a long time now, and I wonder whether or not this is really what you think we should be doing in order to stop the problem there in Burma?
Yes, I do. I really do. I have been to Burma several times. As you know, I have thought about this issue for a very long time. And I believe that we're dealing with a very difficult situation, but I think our present strategy is probably the most effective that we have to offer. I think that we've still got a problem with a lot of opium coming out of that area, but it's less than it was. It seems to be getting less every year. The number of people the number of organizations actively involved in the trafficking seems to have declined, and I think just the pressure that we're putting on now is discouraging certainly a lot of the minor traffickers from staying in the business. I agree that we've got a long way to go. I don't think anybody would dispute that, but I'm not sure that we have any other better, more viable, more effective alternatives to offer. One of the big problems that the Burmese have at the moment is a problem of mobility. As you know, the Shan states is an extremely rugged, isolated area with few, if any, roads that are useful for transporting police and other individuals who could interdict the traffickers. The helicopters alone are not terribly effective in transporting sufficient numbers of troops to interdict these well-armed caravans. And our feeling is, as you know, that providing them with 4 fixed-wing aircraft would give them greater mobility in moving their troops to forward staging areas from which they could then more effectively use the helicopters to ferry in their people. But I think even under the present circumstances, the amount of pressure they've been able to put on these trafficking organizations has reduced the flow of heroin out of that area.
I think you will agree it isn't enough and we've got to do more. With that, I'd like to pass the questioning on to Mr.